You know how some people just suck the energy out of every room they walk into? Just by standing there. With their silence, with their judgment. That was my boyfriend, Silas. And I am Beatrice, 27 years old. I coordinate high-end weddings for a living, which means I actually know what fun looks like. I know what passion looks like. And I know when a room is dead. Make sure to hit that like button if you enjoy my stories. And don't forget to subscribe if you are new here. Because trust me, you are going to want to hear how I escaped the most suffocating relationship of my life. And how I learned that sometimes, freedom is just another word for having nothing left to lose. Silas was one of those guys who made everything heavy. Not in an interesting, mysterious way. More like he was an anchor. And I was a balloon trying to float. We had been together for 3 years. 3 years of him analyzing every grocery bill. 3 years of him wanting to stay in and watch documentaries about furniture restoration. He was a conservator. He fixed old, broken chairs for a living. He spent his days with dust and old wood. And he treated our relationship the same way. Fragile. Needs care. Do not touch too hard or it might break. Meanwhile, I am the one keeping our social life on life support. Making sure we actually leave the apartment. Trying to inject some spontaneity into his rigid little world. The night everything changed started at the Golden Loft. It was a birthday party for a mutual friend. The music was loud. The bass was thumping in my chest. The drinks were flowing. It was the kind of night where the air feels electric. Like anything could happen. I was finally in my element. Wearing this killer crimson dress that hugged all the right places. Feeling like myself for the first time in weeks. Silas, of course, was doing his usual wallflower routine. He was sitting in the corner booth. Nursing a single whiskey, like it was holy water. Checking his watch every 10 minutes. Probably calculating how many hours of sleep he would lose before work the next morning. I looked at him, and I just felt exhausted. Not physically tired, soul tired. I get that not everyone is a social butterfly. But there is a difference between being introverted and being a complete mood killer. Silas had this way of making me feel guilty for wanting to have fun. Like my natural personality was somehow too much for his delicate sensibilities. He would give me these looks whenever I laughed too loud, or danced on a table, or talked to someone for more than 2 minutes, like I was embarrassing him just by being myself. That is when I noticed Dominic. Now, Dominic was everything Silas wasn't. Dominic was a DJ. He worked with me on a few weddings. He was loud, confident, spontaneous. Someone who could actually hold a conversation without dissecting every word choice. Dominic was standing by the bar, surrounded by people, making them laugh. He saw me, and he winked. Just a simple wink, but it sent a jolt through me that I hadn't felt in years. I walked over to get another drink. Finally escaped the funeral in the corner? Dominic asked. His voice was smooth, teasing. He is just tired, I said, rolling my eyes. As always. You look too good to be tired, Bea, Dominic said. He leaned in close. I could smell his cologne. Something spicy and dangerous. You look like you are ready to burn this place down. He got me. He understood. We started talking. And for the first time in months, I felt seen. I felt like someone actually appreciated my fire instead of trying to douse it with water. Meanwhile, Silas was still across the room, looking like someone had forced him to attend his own execution, probably counting down the minutes until he could drag me home to discuss our relationship goals, or our savings account, or whatever boring thing he wanted to talk about. The party got wilder as the night went on. Someone suggested a game, truth or dare. You know, typical party stuff that adults do when they want to feel young again. Nothing serious, just silly challenges that get everyone laughing. I was buzzing with adrenaline and 3 martinis. It was Dominic's turn. He looked at me with a mischievous grin. I dare you, he said, loud enough for the whole group to hear. To kiss the best-looking person in this circle. The group hooted. Everyone looked at Silas, sitting in the corner, looking miserable. And then they looked at Dominic, standing right in front of me, grinning like a wolf. It was supposed to be a joke, a quick peck to get everyone cheering. But when I looked at Silas, with his judgmental eyes and his slumped shoulders, something in me snapped. I was so tired of being the good girl. I was so tired of being bored. I turned to Dominic, and I didn't just peck him. I grabbed the lapels of his jacket. and I pulled him down. And I kissed him. Not a friendly kiss. A real kiss. I felt Dominic's hands slide around my waist. I felt the heat of his body. And suddenly, the whole room faded away. It felt like every nerve ending in my body had been asleep for 3 years and was finally waking up. It was electric. It was rebellious. It was exactly what I needed. The cheering and whistling from our friends snapped me back to reality. I broke away from Dominic, breathless, flushed, riding this incredible high of feeling desired and alive. That is when I saw Silas. He had stood up. He was standing by the pillar near the exit, and the look on his face made my stomach drop. But here is the thing. I wasn't about to let him ruin this moment for me. I was so tired of walking on eggshells around his fragile feelings. So sick of him making me feel guilty for having a personality. So when he just stood there with that wounded expression, I did what I always do. I tried to lighten the mood. "Oh my God, Silas," I laughed, waving my hand dismissively. "Your face? It was a dare. Don't be such a prude." Dominic, bless him, backed me up immediately. He slung his arm around my shoulders with this confident grin. "Yeah, man. Don't be so sensitive. It is just a bit of fun. We are all friends here." The words hung in the air, and I could feel every eye in the room on us. This was Silas's moment, to either laugh it off like a normal person or make a scene and embarrass us both. I was waiting for the usual routine. Him getting all hurt and pouty. Me having to spend the rest of the night managing his feelings instead of enjoying myself. But instead, Silas did something he had never done before. He walked over to us. His movements were slow, deliberate. He stopped 3 feet away. He didn't look at Dominic. He looked straight at me. His eyes were dark, empty, like someone had turned off the lights inside a house. "I am not laughing," he said. His voice was quiet, but somehow sharper than any scream. The party atmosphere shifted instantly. The music seemed to stop. My friends went quiet, and I felt this weird chill run through me. This wasn't the Silas I knew, the one who apologized when other people bumped into him, the one who backed down from any hint of conflict. This Silas was looking at me like he was seeing someone he didn't recognize. But I wasn't about to back down either. If he wanted to make this into a big dramatic moment, fine. I took a step forward, pulling away from Dominic's arm, and focused all my attention on him. "You never do," I said, my voice getting sharper. "That is the problem, Silas. You are always so serious. You are too sensitive. You are killing the vibe and embarrassing me." There it was. Everything I had been thinking for months. Finally, out in the open. Silas made everything harder than it needed to be. He turned fun moments into emotional discussions. He made me feel guilty for being social. And now he was doing it again, in front of all my friends. I was done tiptoeing around his insecurities. Silas looked at me for what felt like forever, and I expected him to start explaining his feelings, or asking if we could talk about this privately. Instead, he turned his back on me, on Dominic, on everyone, and walked straight to the coat check. He grabbed his jacket with these steady, deliberate movements, and headed for the front door. The silence in the room was deafening. Everyone was staring at me, waiting to see what I would do. Part of me wanted to run after him, to fix it, but that would prove his point, that I was supposed to drop everything and manage his emotions whenever he got overwhelmed. So I stayed put. I lifted my chin and turned back to my friends. "Well, that was dramatic," I said, forcing a laugh. "Anyone want another drink?" The party slowly got back to normal, but something felt off. Dominic was still flirting. My friends were still laughing, but I kept thinking about the look in Silas's eyes before he left. It wasn't hurt or anger. It was something colder, more final, like he had made some kind of decision. I stayed until nearly 3 in the morning, partly because I was having fun, and partly because I wasn't ready to face whatever mood Silas would be in when I got home. When I finally called a ride, Dominic offered to share it. We ended up making out in the back seat like teenagers. It felt rebellious, exciting. Everything my relationship with Silas had stopped being. I fumbled with my keys at the front door of our apartment, expecting to find Silas asleep, or pretending to be asleep, or sitting at the kitchen table ready to have a talk. I pushed the door open, and the apartment was dark, but not empty. Silas was in the bedroom. The light was on. He was standing by the bed, A large, open suitcase sat on the mattress. He was folding his shirts, not throwing them, not shoving them, folding them, with that precise, methodical care he used when restoring a 17th century chair. Fold. Smooth the fabric. Place in the suitcase. Reach for the next one. Silas? I called out, kicking off my heels. Are you seriously packing? Is this your big dramatic gesture? He didn't look up. He didn't pause. Are you sulking because of a stupid game? I leaned against the doorframe, trying to look unbothered, even though my heart was hammering a weird rhythm against my ribs. You are blowing this so far out of proportion, it is insane. Silas picked up his favorite gray sweater, the one I bought him for Christmas last year. He folded the arms across the chest. The lease is in your name, he said. His voice was calm, even, completely devoid of emotion. I have paid my share of the rent through the end of the month. I transferred the utility money to your account 10 minutes ago. I stared at him, my mouth falling open. His calmness was throwing me completely off script. What is that supposed to mean? I asked. What do you want me to do, Silas? Grovel? You want me to beg forgiveness for a 10-second dare? He placed the sweater in the suitcase. And finally, he looked at me. No, he said. I don't want you to do anything, Beatrice. He used my full name. He never used my full name. It was always Bea, or Bibi. I am done. Done? I laughed. A sharp, hysterical sound. You are breaking up with me over a kiss? You are that fragile? Silas walked over to the dresser. He picked up his watch, his spare keys. It wasn't the kiss, he said softly. He put the items in his pocket. It was the fact that you looked at me to see if I was hurting. He zipped the suitcase closed, and when you saw that I was, he stood the suitcase upright. You did it anyway. He walked past me, rolling the suitcase behind him. The wheels made a low rumbling sound on the hardwood floor. You wanted an audience, Beatrice. He stopped at the front door. You wanted to show everyone that you were too wild for me. He opened the door. Congratulations. You put on a great show. Where are you going? I demanded, my voice rising, panic starting to prick at the edges of my anger. You can't just leave at 3 in the morning. This is ridiculous. Let's talk about this tomorrow when you aren't being hysterical. Silas turned and gave me one last look. It was a look of absolute indifference. I am not hysterical, he said. I am relieved. And then he walked out. He closed the door. The click of the latch was the loudest sound I had ever heard. I stood there in the hallway, alone, and suddenly, uncertain. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. Silas was supposed to be the one chasing after me, trying to fix things. He was supposed to care enough to fight, but he hadn't fought. He had just left, like I was a piece of furniture that wasn't worth restoring anymore. The first week was amazing, or at least, that is what I told everyone. I am finally free, I told my coworker, Oakley, over lunch. I didn't realize how much he was holding me back until he was gone. Silas was just heaviness, you know? Now I can breathe. I threw myself into the single life. I went out with Dominic almost every night. We went to clubs. We went to after parties. We crashed events. It was loud. It was chaotic. It was everything I thought I wanted. I posted everything on social media. Pictures of me and Dominic laughing. Pictures of cocktails. Pictures of sunrises after staying out all night. I wanted Silas to see them. I wanted him to see what he was missing, to realize that his dramatic exit hadn't devastated me. I wanted him to see that I was thriving without his boring stability. But Silas had vanished. He blocked me on Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, even LinkedIn. It was like he had erased me from his existence. I created a fake account to check up on him, just out of curiosity, obviously, but his profile was private, locked down tight. The silence was infuriating. Where was the angry text? Where was the drunken late-night call? Where was the begging? Instead of his presence, I started noticing the absence of it in other ways. My apartment started to fall apart. Dishes piled up in the sink because Silas wasn't there to load the dishwasher every night. The trash overflowed because he wasn't there to take it out on Tuesday evenings. I missed a bill payment for the internet because he used to handle the finances. And suddenly my Wi-Fi was cut off in the middle of a Zoom call with a client. Little cracks. Tiny fractures in the foundation of my life. And Dominic? Dominic was fun, but he was useless. He was always late. He forgot his wallet constantly. He would come over, drink my wine, sleep in my bed, and leave wet towels on the floor. One night, I had a terrible migraine, the kind that makes light hurt. Silas would have drawn the blinds, brought me ice water and painkillers, rubbed my temples in silence. Dominic turned up the music. "Come on, Bia," he said, bouncing around the living room. "We are going to the Neon Lounge. Shake it off." "I really can't," I whispered. "My head is splitting." "You are turning into a bore," he laughed. "Don't be like your ex." That stung. So I took 3 pills, put on my makeup, and went out. I smiled for the photos. I drank the drinks. But inside, I felt hollow. I woke up the next morning feeling like death. And when I reached for my phone, I saw a notification from the bank. Overdraft fee. I had spent more money in 2 weeks with Dominic than I usually spent in 2 months with Silas. I sat up in bed, looking around my messy room. Dominic was snoring beside me, mouth open, smelling like stale beer. And for a split second, I looked at the empty side of the closet where Silas's perfectly folded shirts used to be, and I felt a pang of something that felt suspiciously like regret. But I pushed it down. I wasn't going to be the weak one. I was winning. I was the one having fun. Silas was the loser who couldn't handle a joke, right? My job as a wedding coordinator is all about details. Precision, timing, contingency plans. Silas understood that. He respected my stress. But lately, my focus was slipping. I was tired all the time from the late nights. My mind was scattered, and I was making mistakes. Small ones at first, ordering the wrong color napkins, mixing up the seating chart. But then came the Sterling Vance wedding. This was the event of the season. A massive outdoor ceremony on a private estate overlooking the cliffs. Very expensive, very high stakes. I had hired Dominic to be the DJ. He begged me for the gig, said he needed the cash, said he would be professional. "Don't worry, babe," he had said, kissing my neck. "I will rock it." The day of the wedding, everything was going wrong. The florist was late. The caterer was short-staffed. I was running around like a headless chicken, trying to put out fires. I needed Dominic to set up the sound system early for the sound check, but he was nowhere to be found. I called him. Voicemail. I texted him. Nothing. He finally rolled in 20 minutes before the guests were supposed to arrive, looking hungover, wearing a t-shirt instead of the suit I had told him to wear. "Where have you been?" I hissed, dragging him behind the marquee. "Chill, Bia," he said, putting on sunglasses. "Traffic was a nightmare. I am here now." "You look like trash," I said. "Go change. Now." He laughed. "You are so sexy when you are bossy." He didn't change. He went to the open bar instead. The ceremony started. The bride was walking down the aisle. It was a beautiful moment. Everyone was crying. I signaled Dominic to play the entrance music, specifically, classical violin, track 4. Instead, blasting through the speakers at maximum volume, was heavy techno, with explicit lyrics. The bride stopped dead. The mother of the bride gasped. The groom looked furious. I sprinted toward the DJ booth. Dominic was bobbing his head, holding a beer, totally oblivious. "Turn it off!" I screamed, lunging for the controls. "Turn it off, you idiot!" We grappled for a second. The music screeched and cut out, leaving a horrible feedback whine that made everyone cover their ears. Dominic looked at me. "Whoa, easy," he said into the live microphone. "Technical difficulties, folks. The lady is a bit stressed." The silence that followed was worse than the techno. It was the sound of my career ending. The rest of the night was a blur of apologies, tears, and shouting. The father of the bride threatened to sue. My boss, Mrs. Halloway, arrived within the hour. She didn't yell. She just looked at me with cold disappointment. "Go home, Beatrice," she said. "We will discuss your employment on Monday." I walked out to the parking lot. Dominic was leaning against his car, smoking a cigarette. "That was intense," he said. "You got me fired," I whispered. "I got you fired?" he scoffed. "You are the one who didn't check the playlist. You are the coordinator, right? You played the wrong track. You were drinking." "I was having fun," he said, shrugging. "You used to be fun, B. Now you are just heavy." He used the same word I had used to describe Silas. "I think we need a break," Dominic said, flicking his cigarette away. You are bringing me down. A break? I stared at him. I lost my job because of you, and you are dumping me in a parking lot? Don't be dramatic, he said. He got into his car. Call me when you loosen up, and he drove away, leaving me standing there in the gravel, in my expensive suit, with no job, no boyfriend, and no ride home. I sat on the curb and cried. Not because of Dominic. He was trash. I cried because for the first time, I realized that the safety net I thought I had, the one Silas had spent 3 years holding underneath me, was gone. 6 months passed. My life became a series of closed doors. Mrs. Halloway fired me on Monday morning. Word got around fast in the industry. Unprofessional, unreliable, hires boyfriends who ruin ceremonies. I couldn't get a job planning a toddler's birthday party. I was living off my savings, which were dwindling fast. I was alone in the apartment, surrounded by the mess I couldn't seem to clean up. And all I could think about was Silas. I missed his quiet. I missed his stability. I missed the way he made me feel safe. I finally broke down and went to find him. I knew he usually had coffee at a small shop called the Daily Grind on Saturday mornings. It was his routine. I used to make fun of it. You are so predictable, I used to say. Now, I was counting on it. I parked my car down the street, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I checked my reflection in the mirror. I looked tired. My roots were showing. I hadn't bought new clothes in months. I walked toward the coffee shop and saw him through the window. He was sitting at a corner table. But he wasn't alone. There was a woman sitting across from him. She wasn't flashy. She had brown hair pulled back in a loose bun. She was wearing a simple blue sweater. She was reading a book. And Silas was reading a newspaper. They weren't talking. They were just sitting. In comfortable silence, Silas reached across the table, not looking up from his paper, and pushed his muffin toward her. She broke off a piece, smiled, and pushed it back. It was such a small gesture, so intimate, so easy. It was the kind of piece I had burned to the ground because I thought it was boring. I stood there on the sidewalk, frozen. I watched them for 10 minutes, just observing this life that used to be mine, or could have been mine, if I hadn't been so obsessed with noise. Then, Silas looked up. His eyes scanned the street, and landed on me. I held my breath, expecting something. Anger? Sadness? Recognition? But his face didn't change. He didn't frown. He didn't smile. He just looked at me, for 1 second. And then he looked back at the woman. He said something to her. She laughed. A soft, genuine sound. And he smiled. A real smile. The kind that reaches the eyes. The kind he hadn't given me in the last year of our relationship. He had erased me. Not with a fight. Not with a block button. But with indifference. I was a ghost to him. I turned around and walked away, my legs feeling heavy as lead. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run in there and flip the table. Make a scene. Force him to acknowledge me. But I knew it wouldn't matter. Because you can't haunt someone who doesn't believe in ghosts anymore. My savings ran out. I had to move out of our beautiful apartment. I moved into a small studio on the bad side of town. The faucet leaked. The neighbors screamed at each other all night. And I finally got a job. Not as a planner, but as a waitress at a cafe downtown. It was humiliating. Serving people I used to work with, seeing them pretend not to recognize me. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, the bell above the door chimed. I looked up from the counter where I was wiping down a spill and saw Silas walk in. My heart stopped. He looked good. He was wearing a nice coat. He looked filled out, healthy. He was holding the door open, and the woman from the coffee shop walked in. She was wearing a ring, a simple, elegant diamond on her left hand. They were laughing, shaking rain off their umbrellas. They didn't see me at first. They sat at a booth near the window. I stood behind the counter, my hands trembling. My coworker Jenny nudged me. "Table 4 needs water," she said. I could have asked Jenny to take it. I should have asked Jenny to take it, but some masochistic part of me needed to know. I needed to face him one last time. I grabbed the water pitcher and walked over. "Here is some water," I said. My voice sounded small, raspy. Silas looked up. He stopped, mid-sentence. He looked at the water pitcher, then at my apron, then at my face. There was a moment of pause. The woman looked at me politely. Thank you, she said. Silas looked at me, and I waited. I waited for the spark, the anger, the pity. Silas, I whispered. I didn't know what I wanted to say. I am sorry? I miss you? Please save me? Silas looked at me, and his expression was perfectly polite. Hello, Beatrice, he said. Not Bea. Beatrice, we are ready to order if you have a moment. It was a customer talking to a server. Nothing more. He turned to the woman. The scones here are excellent, Sarah. You should try the blueberry one. He dismissed me, without being rude, without being cruel. He just moved on. I stood there for a second longer than I should have, watching him look at her, watching him put his hand over hers on the table, watching the life I had thrown away because I wanted a 10-second thrill. I will get someone to take your order, I stammered. I turned and walked back to the kitchen. I put the pitcher down, and I stared at the wall. I realized then that the punishment wasn't that he left. The punishment wasn't that he hated me. The punishment was that he was happy, and I had absolutely nothing to do with it. He had built a house, and I was just a termite he had removed from the foundation. I looked through the kitchen window. I saw them laughing. I saw the rain falling outside. I saw my reflection in the glass. Faded, tired, alone. And for the first time in my life, I had absolutely nothing to say. So I picked up a rag, and I went back to cleaning tables, while the silence of my empty life roared in my ears.